Hi, I'm Maddie Spencer, and I've been using ZBrush since 2003. Today at the ZBrush Summit, I'm going to share a tip with you on how you can use frame mesh under the curve tools to create edge details on costume elements like panels on a spacesuit or edges on hammered steel armor. So let's take a look at how this works. I have my alien on screen right now, and I've got just a generic body for the suit. Now this is actually the Nik Z mesh that comes pre-installed with ZBrush. I've just stretched the hands out and taken off the sort of body details, and I've also deleted the head. So I'm going to go to my polygroups menu, and I'm going to group visible, so there's nothing but a single polygroup here. Now I'm going to divide this mesh up a few times, maybe 3 times, just to give myself enough resolution that I can paint a nice crisp mask on here. And I'm just going to use the masking brush to paint some panels. And the mask panels are eventually going to become panel loops. We're going to polygroup with these. So I just want to create some kind of interesting shapes here. A nice thing when you're doing something like this, I find, is sometimes you can get interesting shapes just by sort of following the underlying form of the anatomy more or less. You don't have to exactly match it, but I'll sort of do a little panel over the abdominals and maybe do a panel here that sort of follows more or less the lateral oblique. Just helps give you a nice flow that works with the body, but it doesn't have to be, like I said, exactly the same shape as what the anatomy is underneath. It's just there to give you sort of a guide. So it's just a way that you can start. So I'm going to put a shoulder pad here. So I'm going to mask out the shoulder area. And then let's do a little mask here around the bicep. And I think it would be neat if we had a panel that sort of followed the extensor muscles here, the forearm. So let's bring this down here, and maybe we'll do another panel this way that sort of follows the flexor muscles. There we go. And while we're at it, we'll just do a few more here. I'll do sort of a loop that comes around this way, sort of following the sartorius muscle and the vastus medialis, and we'll do another bigger panel out here on the side that kind of represents the side of the thigh here. And then of course I can erase out with Control-Alt if I overshoot that and paint too much mask in one particular area. There we go. And you don't have to worry about these being perfect because we're going to clean them up here in just a second. So now that I've got these masked out, I'm going to go to Tool, Polygroups, Group Masked. There we go. Now if I clear my mask and go to frame mode, you can see I've got a polygroup for each of those areas that was previously masked. Now I'm going to go to the geometry menu. I'm going to go to the edge loop sub menu, and I'll use panel loops. Now I'm going to turn my elevation down a little bit so that keeps it from sort of expanding too much off the surface. I am going to turn on thickness, or turn up thickness to about, let's say, 0.07 for thickness. I don't want it to be too thick, and I'm going to turn off double. I don't want it to be double-sided. So now I'm going to go ahead and just click panel loops, and I need to delete my lower subdivision levels. Don't forget that. Now I will click panel loops, and it's going to carve a panel loop around each one of those islands. Now, if you look at them, they're kind of messy. They don't have a nice clean look about them. So what I'll do now is go to the deformation submenu, and there is the polish by features slider here. If I turn that up, by default, it may not really appear to do anything, but if you turn off, or just click the radio button here, oops, wrong one, click the radio button on polish by features. So now, if I turn that up, I will get more of an effect. There we go. Make sure that it's an empty circle. There you go. So if I turn that up really high, you see that that really polishes things down and gives us a nice clean edge around that paneling. So now I'm going to Control-Shift-Click on the inner shell. That would be kind of the undersuit, and make sure that that's hidden. And I'm going to go to the subtool menu, go to Split and Split Hidden. And now that's split that inner suit out as its own subtool. Now I've got a separate subtool, which are just the panels and their thickness. If I go into frame mode, you can see that these still have their individual polygroups for the thickness and for the facing panels. So I'll turn frame mode off, and I'll turn on visibility on that inner suit. I'm going to select the inner suit, and then I'm going to go to, let's zoom out a bit so we can see it properly. I'm going to go to the surface noise plugin. We'll zoom in on that a little bit so we can see it. And I'm going to go to noise plugin. I just want to give this sort of an underlying texture. Noise plugin will open up the noise plug, and it's actually opening up on my other screen here. So I've got multiple monitors. I'm going to have to sort of reduce my ZBrush size here. Now I'll open up the noise plugin, and we'll drag that onto screen so you can see it. I'm going to select the hex tiles. So we'll go to hex tile, click OK. And then I'm going to take mixed basic noise down to 0, and I'm going to take my plugin scale down so I can see it, and then take the strength and turn that up. And let's invert that so it's going in instead of out. There we go, that's what I want. And then click OK. So now I've got this hex tiling that's on the undersuit. Now if I turn on my paneling, we've got the paneling separate. So I'm going to alt-click on the paneling. Now what I want to do is I'm going to create sort of a piping that goes around those panels. So it's sort of like there's some sort of seaming or some tubing that's just an extra little touch of detail on this. So what I will do is I will Control-Shift-Click on the panels, and that's going to hide the panel thickness. Now I'm going to do another split hidden. So I've got a separate subtool now for the thickness